We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over the small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood which, by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space. Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that are to our minds as ours are to the beasts in the jungle, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. In the 39th year of the 20th century came the Great Disillusionment. It was near the end of October. Business was better, the war scare was over, more men were back at work, and sales were picking up. On this particular evening, October 30th, the Crosley service estimated that 32 million people were listening in on radios.
For the next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. Slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Nova Scotia, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northeastern states, bringing a forecast of rain, accompanied by winds of light gale force. Maximum temperature, 66. Minimum, 48. This weather report comes to you from the Government Weather Bureau.
Cletus, I'm eating dirt day in and day out, and I could hardly breathe.
Nah, Mother, we can hardly afford to stop working our farm because of a dirty mouth. Let's just pray that the dirty 30s pass quickly so someday we can harvest our crops without an entire dust bowl falling on us.
These are hard times in America. Our economic depression coupled with dust and wind has made every man, woman, and child suffer under this crisis. And nobody has suffered more than America's farmers.
If only we had protection over our faces.
Yeah, I'd like to get some sugar from my honey without getting a mouthful of sand in return.
Well, thanks to reserve stockpiles of masks from the 1918 flu pandemic, farmers no longer have to suffer breathing in dust as they try to feed the world and kiss their wives. That's right, a national treasure trove of unused masks is now available to America's dusty dirt farmers.
I ain't no mask slacker. Give me one of those.
You too, mister. Maybe now we can kiss and farm without a face full of dirt.
Oh, Cletus, you sure are romantic. Pull that mask up and pucker up, pumpkin.
Don't be a mask slacker. Reserve your miracle mask today. Who knows, you might also help prevent the next pandemic.
Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving towards the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms the Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote.
Freeze, or I'll shoot! Wait, is that you, Timmy?
Aw, shucks, mister. I was just trying out my new x-ray glasses.
And Mrs. Patterson's rose bushes in the middle of the night.
Try them on, mister. You'll see why.
Check out the gams on Miss Patterson.
What was that, mister?
I said, you better let me hold on to these. I have a doctor friend who could use these for, doctor stuff.
No sweat, officer. I'll just go down to the Piggly Wiggly and get another tasty box of Cracker Jacks. Each box contains a pair of magic x-ray glasses.
Cracker Jacks, 'cause boys will be boys.
Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in a bulletin a moment ago, the Government Meteorological Bureau has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with a noted astronomer, Professor Pearson, who will give us her views on this event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, New Jersey.
Ladies, Has your complexion become more run down over the past couple years?
Why, yes, it has.
Has your skin begun to spot despite your skincare?
All my hard work, all for naught.
Good news. Maybelline has just released its newest innovation in women's beauty, compact powder for your beautiful skin.
It really works. My skin is flawless.
Maybelline Skin, now arsenic-free.
We are ready now to take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, where Carla Phillips, our commentator, will interview Professor Pearson, a famous astronomer.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carla Phillips speaking to you from the Observatory of Princeton. I am standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong slit in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanism of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly above me on a small platform, peering through the giant lens. Ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen, during any delay that may arise during an interview. Besides the ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions?
At any time, Mr. Phillips.
Professor, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope?
Nothing unusual at the moment, Mr. Phillips. A red disk swimming in a blue sea, transverse stripes across the disk. They're quite distinct now because Mars happens to be the point nearest to Earth, in opposition, as we call it.
In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Pearson?
Not canals, I can assure you, Mr. Phillips, although that is the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, however, the stripes are merely the result of atmospheric conditions peculiar to the planet.
Then you're quite convinced as a scientist that living intelligence, as you know it does, not exist on Mars.
I'd say the chances against it are 1,000 to 1.
And yet, how do you account for these gas eruptions occurring on the surface of the planet at regular intervals?
Ms. Phillips, I cannot account for it.
By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from the Earth?
Approximately 40 million miles.
Well, that seems a safe enough distance. Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the National History Museum, New York. Quote, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate. Signed, Lloyd Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division, unquote. Professor Pearson, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbances observed on the planet Mars?
Hardly, Mr. Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, we shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 10 minutes, we've been speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton, bringing you a special interview with Professor Pearson, noted astronomer. This is Carla Phillips speaking. We're returning you now to our New York studio.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from Intercontinental Radio News. Toronto, Canada, Professor Morse of Macmillan University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirms earlier reports received from American observatories. Now, nearer home comes a special bulletin from Trenton, New Jersey. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m., a huge flaming object, believed to be a meteorite, fell on the farm in the neighborhood of Grover's Mill, New Jersey, 22 miles from Trenton. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of several hundred miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far north as Elizabeth. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, and will have our commentator, Carla Phillips, give you a word picture of the scene as soon as she can reach there from Princeton. In the meantime, we take you to a word from our sponsors.
Ow, Jimmy, that hurt!
Sorry, Susie, but I'm hunting mosquitoes. Gee whiz, Susie, why'd you have to slap me so hard?
Well, I'm hunting boys named Jimmy.
I'm telling Ma.
Children, 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 calm down and listen to me before anyone else gets hurt.
Yes, sir, Mr. Policeman.
Pretty soon this neighborhood will be mosquito-free because of a miracle chemical called DDT.
DDT?
That's right! DDT is a deadly chemical for mosquitoes, but completely safe for men, women, children, and pets. So, be looking out for a truck rolling through your neighborhood spraying this miracle fog. And don't worry if you cough, like I always say. DDT is as safe as your father's cigarette smoke.
We take you now to Cobos Mill, New Jersey.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carla Phillips again of Rivermill Farm, Riversmill, New Jersey. Professor Pearson and myself made the 11 miles from Princeton in 10 minutes. Well, I just got here. I guess that's the thing. Directly in front of me, half buried in a vast pit, must have struck with terrific force. The ground is covered with splinters of a tree. It must have struck on its way down. What I can see of the object itself doesn't look very much like a meteor. At least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. It has a diameter of, what would you say, Professor Pearson?
What's that?
What would you say? What is the diameter of this?
About 30 yards.
About 30 yards. The metal on the sheath is, well, I've never seen anything like it. The color is sort of yellowish-white. Curious spectators now are pressing close to the object in spite of the efforts of the police to keep them back. They're getting in front of my line of vision. Would you mind standing to one side, please? While the policemen are pushing the crowd back, here's Mr. Wimmer, owner of the farm here. He may have some interesting facts to add. Mr. Wimmer, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of the rather unusual visitor that dropped in your backyard?
I was listening to the radio and kind of drowsing. That professor fellow was talking about Mars, so I was half dozing and half... I heard something.
And what did you hear?
A hissing sound, like this. Kind of like a 4th of July rocket.
Yes, then what?
I turned my head out the window and would have swore I was asleep to dreaming. I seen that kind of greenish streak, and then zingo! Something smacked the ground, knocked me clear out of my chair.
Well, were you frightened, Mr. Wimmer?
Well, I ain't quite sure. I reckon I was kind of riled.
Thank you, Mr. Wimmer. Thank you very much.
Want me to tell you some more?
No, that's quite all right. That's plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard Mr. Wimmer, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Hundreds of cars are parked in the field in back of us, and the police are trying to rope off their roadway leading into the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. Car taillights throw an enormous spotlight on the pit where the objects have buried. Now some of the more daring souls are now venturing near the edge. The silhouettes stand out against the metal sheen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but now it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you've caught it already on your radio. Listen, please. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming sound that seems to come from inside the object. I'll move the microphone nearer. Now we're not more than 25 feet away. Can you hear it now, Professor Pearson?
Yes, Mr. Phillips.
Can you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise inside the thing?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I see. Do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial, that is, not found on this Earth. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in a meteorite. However, this thing is smooth, and as you can see, of cylindrical shape.
Just a minute. Something's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific. This end of the thing is beginning to flake off. The top is beginning to rotate like a screw, and the thing must be hollow. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Wait a minute, someone's crawling over a hollow top. Someone or something. I can see peering out of that black hole two luminous discs. Are they eyes? It might be your face. It might be.
Does your wife stare at women too long? Has she hired a maid but nothing seems to get cleaned except the sheets? Are you finding yourself having to give commands twice? Well, I have a solution for you. Penhurst Sanatorium, where struggling individuals come clean. Try our new state-of-the-art treatments. We have electroshock therapy. We offer life-changing lobotomies. We have new and improved pharmaceuticals that will help with any condition. You'll feel like you're floating on air. If she doesn't have that glazing look in her eye, you get your money back guaranteed.
We now return you to Carla Phillips at Grover's Mill.
Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, back of a stone wall that adjoins Mr. Williams' garden. From here I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk and as long as I can see. A hunched shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against the mirror. There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right in the advancing men. It strikes them head on.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indelkoffer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disturbances on the surface of the planet.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been handed a message that came in from Grover's Mill by telephone. Just one moment, please. At least 40 people, including 6 state troopers, lie dead in a field east of the village of Grover's Mill. The bodies blown and distorted beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you hear will be that of Brigadier General Montgomery Smith, commander of the state militia at Trenton, New Jersey.
I have been requested by the governor of New Jersey to place the counties of Mercer and Middlesex as far west as Princeton and east to Jamesburg under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter this area except by special pass issued by state or military authorities. 4 companies of state militia are proceeding from Trenton to Grover's Mill and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations.
You have just been listening to General Montgomery Smith commanding the state militia at Trenton. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe at Grover's Mill are coming in. The strange creatures, after unleashing the deadly assault, crawled back in their pit and made no attempt to prevent the efforts of the firemen to cover the bodies and extinguish the fire. The combined fire departments of Mercer County are fighting the flames which menace the entire countryside. We have been unable to establish any contact with our mobile unit at Grover's Mill, but we hope to be able to return you there at the earliest possible moment. In the meantime, we take you to... Just one moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been informed that we finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Grover's Mill, where she has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, she will give you an explanation of the calamity. The next voice you hear will be that of Professor Pearson, brought to you by direct wire. Professor Pearson?
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Grover's Mill, I can give you no authoritative information, either to their nature, their origin, or their purposes here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to the mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It is all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It's my guess that in some way they were able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute no conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose by means of a polished parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That is my conjecture of the origin of the heat ray.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of your government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive enemy with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you.
You have just heard the Secretary of the Interior speaking from Washington. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We are informed the central portion of New Jersey is blacked out from radio communication due to the effect of the heat ray upon power lines and the electrical equipment. Here's a special bulletin from New York. Cables have been received from English, French, and German scientific bodies offering assistance. Astronomers report continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The majority voice the opinion that the enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. There have been several attempts to locate Professor Pearson of Princeton, who has observed Martians at close range. It is feared he was lost in the recent battle. Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report 3 Martian machines visible above treetops, moving north towards Somerville with population fleeing ahead of them. The heat ray is not in use, although advancing at express train speed. Invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making a conscious effort to avoid destruction of cities and countryside. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and railroad tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize human society. Here's a bulletin from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Coon hunters have stumbled upon a second cylinder similar to the first embedded in the Great Swamp 20 miles south of Morristown. Army field pieces are proceeding from Newark to blow up the second invading unit before the cylinder can be opened and the fighting machine rigged. They're taking up a position in the foothills of the Watchung Mountains. Another bulletin from Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report enemy machines, now 3 in number, increasing speed northward, kicking over houses and trees in their evident haste to form a conjunction with their allies south of Morristown. Machines also sighted by a telephone operator east of Middlesex, within 10 miles of Plainfield. A fleet of Army bombers carrying heavy explosives flying north in pursuit of enemy. Scouting planes act as guides. They keep the speeding enemy in sight.
Range, 32 meters.
32 meters.
Projection, 39 degrees.
39 degrees.
Fire!
140 yards to the right, sir.
Shift range, 31 meters.
31 meters.
Projection, 37 degrees.
37 degrees.
Fire!
A hit, sir. We got the tripod of one of them. They've stopped. The others are trying to repair it.
Quick, get the range. Shift 30 meters.
40 meters.
Projection, 27 degrees.
47 degrees.
Fire!
Can't see the shell land, sir. They're letting off smoke.
What is it?
A black smoke, sir. They're moving this way, lying close to the ground. It's moving fast.
Put on gas masks. Get ready to fire. Shift to 24 meters.
24 meters.
Projection, 24 degrees.
24 degrees.
Fire!
Still can't see, sir. The smoke's coming near.
Get the range.
23 meters.
23 meters.
Projection, 22 degrees.
22 degrees.
Army bombing plane V-843 off Bayonne, New Jersey. Lieutenant Voigt commanding 8 bombers. Enemy tripod machines now in sight, reinforced by 3 machines from the Morristown cylinder. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. The machines are close together now, and we're ready to attack. Green flash! They're spraying us with flame!
This is Bayonne, New Jersey. Calling Lincoln Field. This is Bayonne, New Jersey. Calling Lincoln Field. Come in, please.
This is Lincoln Field. Go ahead.
8 Army bombers in engagement with enemy tripod machines over Jersey Flats. Engines destroyed by heat ray. All crashed. 1 enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in direction of...
This is Newark, New Jersey. This is Newark, New Jersey. Warning. Poisonous black smoke pouring in from Jersey marshes. Reaches South Street. Gas mask useless. Urge population to move into open spaces. Automobiles use Route 7, 23, 24. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now spreading over Raymond Boulevard.
I'm speaking from the roof of Broadcasting Building, New York City. The bells you hear are ringing to warn people to evacuate the city as the Martians approach. Estimated in the last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along the roads to the north. Hutchinson River Parkway is still kept open for motor traffic. Avoid bridges to Long Island, hopelessly jammed. All communication with Jersey Shore closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army is wiped out. Artillery, Air Force, everything. Wiped out. This may be the last broadcast. We'll stay here to the end. People are holding service here below us, in the cathedral. Now I look down the harbor. All manner of boats overloaded with fleeing population pulling out from the docks. Streets are all jammed. Noise and crowd like New Year's Eve in the city. Wait a minute. The enemy is now in sight above the Palisades. 5 great machines. First one is crossing the river. I can see it from here. Waiting the Hudson, like a man waiting through a brook. A bulletin is handed to me. Martian cylinders are falling all over the country. One outside of Buffalo, one in Chicago, St. Louis, seem to be timed and spaced. When the first machine reaches the shore, he stands, watching, looking over at the city. His steel, cowlish head is even with the skyscrapers. He waits for the others. They rise like a line of new towers on the city's west side. Now they're lifting their metal hands. This is the end now. Smoke comes out. Black smoke, drifting over the city. People in the streets see it now. They're running towards the East River. Thousands of them, dropping in like rats. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It reaches Times Square. People are trying to run away from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. Now the smoke's crossing 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue. 100 yards away. 50 feet.
As I set down these notes on paper, I'm obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living person on Earth. I had been hiding this empty house near Grover's Mill, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life, a life that has no continuity with the present, furtive existence of the lonely derelict who pencils these words on the back of some astronomical notes, bearing the signature of Professor Pearson. I look down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I try to connect them with the professor who lives at Princeton, and on the night of October 30th, glimpse through her telescope at an orange splash of light on a distant planet. I venture from the house. I make my way to a road, no traffic. Here and there a wrecked car, baggage overturned, a blackened skeleton. I push on north. For some reason, I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them. And I keep a careful watch. I have seen these Martians feed. Should one of their machines appear over the top of the trees, I am ready to fling myself flat on the earth. I come to a chestnut tree. October. Chestnuts are ripe. I fill my pockets. I must keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally, I notice a living creature, a small red squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him and wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at that moment the animal and I shared the same emotion, the joy of finding another living being. I push on north. I find dead cows in a brackish field, and beyond the charred ruins of a dairy, the silo remains, standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weathercock. The arrow points north. Next day I come to a city vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off, as if a giant had sliced off its highest towers with a capricious sweep of his hand. I reached the outskirts. I found Newark, undemolished, but humbled by some whim of the advancing Martians. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of someone with a knife in the doorway.
Stop! Where do you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago, from Princeton.
Princeton, huh? That's near Grover's Mill.
Yes.
Well, there's no food here. This is my country. All this end of town down to the river. There's only food for one.
Have you seen any Martians?
Nah. They've gone over to New York. At night the sky is alive with their lights, just as if people were still living in it. By daylight you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I think they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly.
Then it's all over with humanity. Stranger, there's still you and I. 2 of us left.
Yeah. They've got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars, they're probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost one machine. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
And where were you? You're in a uniform.
Yeah, what's left of it. I was in the militia, National Guard. There wasn't any war. Any more than there's war between men and ants.
What are you going to do?
I'm going on, right under their feet. I got a plan. Mankind as we know it is finished. We don't know enough. We gotta learn plenty before we've got a chance. And we've gotta live and keep free while we learn. See? All these little office workers that used to live in these houses, they'd be no good. They haven't any stuff in them. They used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them, running to catch their commuter's train in the morning, afraid they'd be canned if they didn't. Running back at night, afraid they won't be in time for dinner. The Martians will be a godsend for those guys. Nice roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no worries. Yeah, after a week or so chasing about the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
Meantime, you and I and others like us, where are we to live when Martians own the Earth?
I've got it all figured out. We'll live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers. Under New York, there are miles and miles of them. The main ones are big enough for anybody. And there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, subways. You begin to see, huh? We'll get a bunch of strong men together. No weak ones that rubbish out.
I see.
Hey, what's the matter? Where are you going?
Not to that world. Bye, stranger. Well, after parting with the artilleryman, I came at last to the Holland Tunnel. I entered the silent tube, anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the Hudson. Cautiously, I came out of the tunnel and made my way up Canal Street. I reached 14th Street, and there again were black powder and several bodies, and an evil, ominous smell from the gratings of the cellars of some of the houses. I wandered up through the 30s and 40s. I stood alone on Times Square. I caught sight of a lean dog running down 7th Avenue with a piece of dark brown meat in his jaws and a pack of starving mongrels at his heels. He made a wide circle around me, as though he feared I might prove a fresh competitor. I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine, standing somewhere in Central Park, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. An insane idea. I rushed recklessly across Columbus Circle and into the park. I climbed a small hill above the pond at 60th Street, and from there I could see, standing in a silent row along the mall, 19 of those great metal titans, their cowls empty, their steel arms hanging listlessly by their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabit those machines. Suddenly, my eyes were attracted to the immense flock of black birds that hovered directly below me. They circled to the ground, and there, before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the Martians, with the hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in laboratories, it was found that they were killed by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared, slain after all man's defenses had failed, by the humblest thing that God in his wisdom has put upon this earth. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the deep of space no life existed beyond the petty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further. Dim and wonderful is the vision that I have conjured up in my mind of life spreading slowly from this little seedbed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastness of sidereal space, but that's a remote dream. It may be that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve. To them, and not to us, is the future ordained perhaps. Strange it now seems to sit in my peaceful study at Princeton writing down this last chapter of the record begun at the deserted farm in Grover's Mill. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to see young people strolling on the green where the new spring grass heals the last black scars of a bruised earth. Strange to watch the sightseers enter the museum where the disassembled parts of a Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange when I recall the time when I first saw it, bright and clean-cut, hard and silent under the new dawn of that last great day.